Hey, I'm Joe DiGiulio. Welcome back for another free art lesson. Today what I'm going to be doing is working with something that I do with all of my workshop classes, and that is the Joe's Black Bag exercise. To start my workshops, I want to get them right out of the box doing something creative, whether they're an abstract, realist, whatever kind of painter they are. What I'm going to have them do is just take the elements that are in the bag. Only these supplies can be used in this exercise. I've got my little substrate set down here, and then very inexpensively, I can just take a piece of mat scrap. That's what we're using today. I have it sealed down, so we're ready to go. They all get a common element, and that is some white paint. But what I'm going to do today in this bag is use what we've got here. 4 basic elements I use: color, line, shape, and texture. So I have a few items that we're going to use in each one of those elements of design. For color, I've got a Duravan liquid pencil sampler. I've got a little Matisse structure impasto paint. I've got a little fan and a little flat brush, a number 6 flat and a number 4 fan. These are my brushes that I'm going to be using for shape. Line, I've got a woodless graphite pencil. I've got a green Derwent Inktense water-soluble pencil, and a little red Sharpie China marker. So they're actually going to give some different linear qualities, each one of those. And finally, for doing some shapes and textures, I've got a little T30 Creative Marker palette knife. But the thing I want to do is I give them these elements to start working with, and so I'm just going to lay out some of these things and get started with it right now. I've already gone over with them some basic essential compositional elements to get started. So they have an idea whether they're going to do something that's going to be maybe a horizontal or a vertical, or something that might be, if you've seen my composition free art lesson, you'll know more what I'm talking about. But I'm just taking a little bit of this and creating some textures and linear elements. Not really having any rhyme or reason. I just want them to get something down to get started with. So I'm doing that right here. I've got a little bit of this. This is a gray tone. Actually, this liquid pencil comes in several different colors, and you never know what you're going to get. Every time I do this little exercise, there's different items. I try to put about the same amount of items, about 2 things for each of the elements. But this day here, I've got some warm colors, and I was lucky today. I got a little complimentary of the red and green. Sometimes it's not always that. Sometimes you might get a bag that has blue. I don't really think about them when I put these kits together. I just, whatever arbitrarily comes into the kit, they all get a pencil, a paintbrush, whatever. But the whole point is that it's just whatever is created right on the spot. I don't want to put too much thought into it because I don't want to restrict their creative abilities by just having them all have the same thing. I want them all to be different. So I'm just going to add a little color. And as I go and do my little demo, I do the demo first of using the bag myself so they can kind of get an idea. And then I let them go ahead and do something themselves. I show them some techniques I use quite a bit. My spatter technique is one that I'm actually had a lot of success with. It's kind of one of my signature elements. Let me pick up a little white paint here. We're using a little bit of the Matisse titanium white, and that's just going to give us a little bit more range of tone, and it gives me a little bit of contrast between the dark and the light. See, what I'm doing is I'm going to look at making sure they have elements in their bag so they can work on lights and darks, that contrast. They're going to work on different textures. You know, I have something that's just going to be really thick, something that's going to be really thin. I can carve into it. I can push it around with a palette knife. I'm using different elements here. There's not any rhyme or reason to it because I don't want to put any kind of restrictions on them, because this is where I want them to be able to get out of the box, to get creative. So from this, they can kind of get an idea, oh, I see what he's saying. And this is particularly helpful to a painter that has some painting ability, but they might have always painted something realistic. This is going to give them a chance to just do something totally arbitrary without them having to think too much about it, and it actually will help free them up and actually make their paintings that they normally do a little bit more expressive. And you see now I've got a little tone in here of lights and darks, and by using the white, that gives me a little tinting too. Now, this is an ink pencil, and it will work like a colored pencil, but when it hits some fluid, some waters, you're going to be able to paint with it, actually. Let's clean this brush off, and let's check that out. Let's see how that works. Just put a little bit of water. And see, now you see how much more vibrant that has become once I've touched a little water up to it? So it becomes a color all in itself. And I'm just working the brush back and forth. Now, if I'm doing this on a paper, that's probably one thing. I've got a little inexpensive piece of matte scrap, so I don't want to scrub into it too much because it doesn't have really the proper sizing. But the reason why I use these matte scraps is just that they're very inexpensive. So if they had fun with it, they can go ahead. I'll have 20 or 30 of them. I'll let them be able to, you know, do 3 or 4 of them before they actually start going to their work on canvas. So this is how we usually get started. And I can do some light, some dark, some sgraffito where I'm actually etching back into the paint. But see, I don't want to gouge into the paper because the paper, it's just, you know, inexpensive matte paper. But that's not going to be anything to worry about. I will just take a palette knife and scratch some of that and fill that right in. The whole thing is I'm trying to get them to be fearless about what they do and not worry about, oh, did I make a mistake? In other words, they don't need a permission slip. Let them just do the work. Because really, painting is all about the experience. The more that you paint, the more of a library of experience that you're going to build up for yourself. Watching somebody else, you'll get some ideas from it, but you'll never know, oh, how it will do if I hold the brush this way, how much pressure. Those are all things you've got to find for yourself. Art is not a science, it's an art. So you actually have to develop your own technique. And the only way that that's going to happen is by doing the work. So don't go in the art class at 9 o'clock and at 9:15 you're going to think you're Picasso. It's not going to work like that. You've got to put the time in. But because we're using a little bit of these acrylics, I can go right over the top of some colors very quickly. And then I can come back in and reveal that underneath color, which is going to give it another level. So we're doing some line, some texture, some shapes, and some color, the 4 basic elements of any good abstraction. So let me, let's get this red in here. See, the red has got a little bit of pop. So I'm just going to add a little bit of that. And see where I go over the wet paint, it's not really going down, but it's kind of pushing it around a little bit. So that actually will work like another troweling tool. So it's not just a positive mark, actually putting a mark. It can be a negative mark where I'm taking away, which is kind of neat when you're using pencils and things of that nature for what you're doing. Now I'm going to try something a little, why not? Oh, you can't use liquid pencil with white. Why? Why not? Try it. That's the whole idea, is to be fearless with this product. And when I give it to them in the bag for free at a workshop, they're not afraid. They're going to try. But this is how they will learn and get a little bit more experience for themselves. Just working the different colors in, going wild. It doesn't have to be anything perfect. It's just exploring technique. A little dab here, a little dab there, a little water. Actually, I'm liking this liquid pencil mixed with a little white. It's kind of an interesting and very neutral tones. It kind of gives the eye a little resting spot, too, along the way. See how much more that green is interesting now? And you're at the mercy of what I put in the bag, so that's the great part. It changes every time. So if you've had the class before and you take one of my workshops later on, you know what you're in for, but you know what's in the bag is going to be different every time. Some lights, some darks. Oh, I don't know. I got to get some more green in there, I think. Love these fans because you can do so much with them. Pull color, blend color out. Let's give a little tone here, and then we'll add a little water to that. We'll do a little light wash here. Hey, maybe I'll even add some white this time. I haven't tried that yet. A little white, a little water. Let me get a little white wash going here. Now that liquid mixing with that Inktense pencil created this third nice lime color here, a soft color. And it lends itself to the entire composition. I'm just picking up arbitrary spots, not really any rhyme or reason to it. I like to do a lot of etching. I like to get my angst out. I like to get my energy out. And I do that quite a bit with the linear elements of the line. See, when it's wet, it just takes away. When it dries, it actually makes a mark. So just gives it a little bit more excitement, a little bit more action to the piece. Kind of etching these marks, but you see when I scratch, they're kind of all the scratches I've been doing the same direction, and that kind of lends itself to being a repeat motif. These little areas here, just kind of, oh, I don't know, it's just something to play with. Let's get a little white here. And I want to have lights and darks, so I've got a lot of mid-tone areas. I want to make some really white areas and then actually bring in some darker areas as well. Breaking up the space. I love this overlapping effect I get with the white. So I have some bright greens, some bright reds, some different kinds of tones. I'm carrying that little scratchy element right on through. I got some warm tones, some cool tones. So we're kind of, but I'm trying to keep it, you know, not half light, half dark, not half cool, half warm. I kind of want to be one way or the other. So right now I've got a lot of light. I want to get some more dark areas in here. I mean, really dark. because that'll draw your eye there, because there's few dark areas and there's so much light that these now little dark areas I drop in will get your eye to go right to them. And that's all part of the plan here. And just to kind of finish it up, sometimes I'll have to let it dry, look at it a little bit, and then I'll maybe come back and do something else so I can, once it dries, I can put a layer over the top of what I've already got. But again, these exercises are designed just to get them to make a mark. Get them started. Get out of the box. Don't worry about things like, oh, I'm afraid to do it because, you know, it costs me money and it might not look right. Forget that. Try it. Do the work. And when you're getting the black bag for free, you know, you are fearless. So I'm just softening some areas here, giving some little resting spots for the eye. But it's just a fun little exercise to play around. Think of it as sort of like an artist toy box. One technique too is I'm getting a little gray tone here. I'm loading my brush up with a lot of fluid here because I want to be able to do a controlled splatter. And the way I'm going to do that is loading my brush, and then I can control where I want that to go, guide it around. And I can almost command a focal point by using this technique. It's just different things for you to explore. You can scrape away with the brush, the palette knife, excuse me. You know, painting's not only an additive, it should be a subtractive process too. You're adding something, you record your yeses. You're taking something away, you're recording your no's. It's your own personal journey, your own personal experience. Just make it interesting to you. Have fun with it. But by all means, do the work. See, I'm going to let it stay like that. I'm going to remove the tape. And this is why I love to use this tape. It gives me a really great line. And again, we started with just some simple matte scraps. The whole point is to do something very quickly that looks great. The edges are all clean. I could put that in the frame. And it just makes a nice little basic painting. The real cool thing to do is to take 2 or 3 of them and do the same process all at one time. That way you have a nice little set. And that set you can frame, put it down your hallway, something like that. You can bring it home, show your friends, hey, this is what I did when I took Joe DiGiulio's workshop. You know, I hope that people, when they are taking the workshops, will enjoy it. And if you can't take one of my workshops, maybe just gather some supplies using the basic 4 elements, line, texture, shape, and color, and create your own black bag. Go out and try it. I hope you had a good time. Come back and see more of our videos. I appreciate you stopping in and checking us out. I'll see you next time.